Paul, you're up.
Yes, thank you. Purpose of tonight, Jamie has put together a road surface management little program for you. Talk about methodology for road resurfacing. Believe it or not, it is going to get warm out, and we're going to be able to look at our roads again.
You're sure?
I don't believe
What the weatherman says. But one of the things we want to talk about is methodology of how we approach our road system come springtime with the dollars that we have to spend, and how we do that varies greatly. So I'm going to let him go ahead and sort of give you a background of how we look at roads, how we rate them, how we get to the conclusions, and how we're going to treat them this year.
Jamie, if you would.
I'm going to go through this a little on the quick side, so you guys bear with me, and then at the end, if you have any questions, I'll elaborate, but I don't want to
Go for
be
it.
here forever. So I put together a little PowerPoint presentation, road surface management. Looks like our road's out there right now, snow on the side.
Jamie, I think Joe's going to tell you to lean up to the microphone a little bit.
He always tells everybody not to touch the microphone.
Just don't touch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not allowed to touch
Don't
it.
touch the microphone.
We didn't tell you to move it.
All right, I won't touch it. All right, so we'll go through the purpose real quick. The purpose of this is discuss what pavement infrastructure we have, how do we track its condition, how do we maintain it, and where are we going to go from here. So what do we have? Municipal roads, we have approximately 109 miles of municipal road.
That's unbelievable.
34 municipal parking lots. We equate that in road miles, it's roughly 6.3 miles of road. So a total of roughly 115 miles of road. At today's construction cost, that's worth about $72 million. So that might be your most valuable asset as a municipality. And how do we track it? We have a pavement inventory system, and we have a condition assessment system. Pavement inventory system, we use our geographic information system. We have the 115 miles of road broken into 934 different segments, usually like block segments from one intersection to the next. And attached to that digital mapping is attribute data, so the name of the road, the length, the function, the ward, past resurfacing information, condition, etc. And that's a little picture of what we'd see in our GIS mapping if I color code the streets, with red being the worst condition and green being the best condition. This is actually pretty much everything you'll see here is last year's data, because obviously it's roads are covered in snow now. Kind of can't really go out and assess them as it is. But that lets us view spatial patterns. Then we move on to condition assessment system. We utilize what's called a pavement surface evaluation and rating system. The abbreviation is PACER. The University of Wisconsin-Madison came up with it. And it's a system that lets you rate roads based on surface defects, surface deformation, cracks, patches and potholes, etc. And here's a table that shows you the PACER ratings. It's a numerical system from 10 being excellent, actually new construction, to 1 being failed pavement. And here's a breakdown of the way your roads looked last year. So each PACER rating, the number of segments in that category, and the total mileage. The next one's a little bit better way to look at that graphical representation. So you can see sort of like a bell curve there, with most of the roads being around a 5 or a 6. At the left would be failed pavement, at the right would be new pavement. And there's factors that affect the condition of roads. The funding that we have for maintenance of roads, the road construction, which is the materials it's made out of, the road profile, which would be the thickness of the different materials, and the drainage for the road, the traffic volume and the weight of the traffic. So obviously heavy roads that get heavy trucks and lots of them tend to fall apart quicker. Modern asphalt materials, what we're seeing is the super pave asphalt that we use these days isn't as good as the old materials. Winter weather, which is usually in the form of plow damage, cold weather cracking, and the heaving that you see when you drive down the road and it's all bumpy when it's cold out, and preventive maintenance, whether you do it or not. So then we can, since we use a numerical system, we can look at trends. We started this methodology back in 2004, so you can see how the PACER rating for all of your roads trended over time. So we were good, we dipped down to fair for a while, we get back up to good last year. And here's a graph that shows that. You can actually see back in 2004, paving was a little bit more political than it is now. So the wards were pretty far apart in condition. You can see in 2014 how that gap narrowed We pretty much take care of all the roads as they need to be taken care of. The politics are mostly out of it. But you can also see we're teetering on the good fair boundary right now. And then we get to how do we maintain the roads. It starts with prioritization. So we use the road surface age, which is years since last paved. The functional category, so a road is a collector road. We theoretically would resurface more often than a parking lot or a dead end or an alley. And the PACER rating score. And then we have different methodologies for maintenance. You have preventive maintenance, you have repaving, and kind of both of those are based on the PACER rating and how much budget we have to work with. The preventive maintenance, the goal is to preserve roads in good condition before they slip past the point where you can't preserve them anymore. It's more cost effective. Methods that we've used include fog sealing, which is a PACER of 8 to 10, seal coating, PACER of 5 to 6, a seal coat with a flush coat, which we actually, last year we kind of pioneered that one, and crack sealing. And then there's repaving. Those are for roads that are too deteriorated to preserve any longer. Generally with a PACER score of 4 or less. It's less cost effective than preventive maintenance. And what we do is overlays and mill and overlays. And in the past, back, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, that's pretty much all Monroeville did. And this isn't really the best quality image, but it's the best representation I can show you of preventive maintenance versus weighting and repaving. So the orange line represents what you call a degradation curve. That's the condition of the road over time. So you see it starts at excellent on the left. As the pavement ages, it progresses to failed. And you can also see that as it gets farther down in age and the condition gets poorer, the deterioration actually quickens. So once you let the pavement get to a certain level, it falls apart faster. And then you can see the little black stepped line on the right would represent what would happen if you did preventive maintenance. So you'd incrementally improve the road and it would deteriorate a little bit more. You'd keep applying those preventive maintenance treatments and you'd lengthen out that degradation curve and make your pavement last longer for less money. And then just some numerical figures here for the different methods. The cost per mile. I have fog seal at the top here because it'd be the first one we do, but the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The top 5 are what we would consider preventive maintenance, and the bottom 2 would be paving. So you can see crack sealing is relatively cheap, seal coating is a little bit more, and then obviously milling and overlaying is tremendously more expensive. That doesn't account for how long those methods last though. So the next table gives you a breakdown of each method, how many years they add to the lifespan, and the annualized cost. So once again, you can see all the ones at the top, the first 5 or whatever, or preventive maintenance, and they're significantly less expensive than the overlay and the mill and overlay. Then we get to what our plan is for this year. What we've seen historically looking at the data is our average lifespan of our overlays is 15.77 years. If you take our road mileage and divide it by that, we should be paving 7.3 miles per year, which would cost us about $1.8 million a year. This year we have $250,000 for road work. So obviously we're a little bit short-funded. Really what it comes down to is you can't afford to pave like we should, and doing nothing is not an option. So we must preserve what we can and get the most bang for our buck. And we're going to try and focus on preservation, which is probably going to come in the form of fog sealing, seal coating, and possibly crack sealing. And likely the only paving you'll see is if it's absolutely necessary. And what it might be is just spot paving in specific areas that have fallen apart over the winter. And just some simple math for you. For $250,000 budget that we have, you could mill and overlay roughly 1 mile or 0.8% of the pavement, or we could seal coat 14.5 miles or 12.6% of the pavement. Obviously one is unsustainable and the other could get us pretty far. And what that really boils down to, the people who are watching on TV, is that the residents need to understand that repaving of the roads will be less frequent than it has been in the past, and that residents should be prepared for seal coating to move further into residential streets. And any questions anybody has?
Jamie, whenever you talk about just like spot paving, at what length does it go from Public Works doing it to outsourcing it?
That's a good question. In the past, usually the spot repairs that we would do, we would have the paving contractor do. We'd kind of identify them as targets of opportunity that were nearby other roads. So I think last year, 2 years ago, we did a couple patches on Duff, a couple patches on Garden City, some other areas like that. But if we're not putting out a big paving program and we're not traversing the municipality, then a lot of that's going to have to fall onto Public Works. They do have some equipment that they didn't have in the past that makes it easier for them to do that. They have a little milling head for their skid steer.
Isn't that really just putting a Band-Aid on the problem every year?
No, not necessarily, especially if you do repairs. If Public Works is to do small repairs, and we follow it up with seal coating the road, it seals it up, it should last.
What if you have a road that's 15 years old?
And we have some of those.
And I know, that's why I'm
I mean, we have
asking
some
now,
of those.
this seal coating or whatever, it's not putting a Band-Aid on it?
It depends what the current condition of it is. I mean, even though it's of age, depending on the condition of it. You know, this week was a perfect example of what I call flash freeze. You had a significant rain for over a 24-hour period. That water has seeped into the roadway system. It's going to be 2 degrees tonight.
Right,
You know, that asphalt's going to heave. And we really have to wait till spring to happen
sure.
to really evaluate that. You know, we may be at a point where we have, you know, what we're looking at today is we know we at least have one road that's in really bad condition. We may have several come springtime. We just don't know that until that happens.
Right.
But wouldn't it be more cost efficient to fix it properly the first time? I mean, it seems
If
like.
you have the money, that's the key.
You could preserve the roads while they're still in decent condition.
Well, no, I agree
We're
to
talking
that.
about a road that's so far gone that
I'm talking about a
Maybe
road
fine,
that should be milled, but we're just gonna throw some slurry seal.
Well, no, if it's a condition, like you said, if it has a PACER rating of 4 or less, it's beyond that point. We won't even bother doing that. What the chip seal that he had shown on the PowerPoint, the most recent roads that we did that on was College Park Drive and Alpine Village Drive. They were sort of we were trying to find out what happened with it because we did a different methodology there. We did not get too many residents complaints, to be honest with you, because the way we did it, we locked the stone into place and, you know, didn't have a lot of the old-fashioned tar and chip where you had the tar on vehicles and the chips were flying around. It didn't occur. But again, at the end of the day, you're the ones who are going to get the phone calls. You know, most of the residents are used to seeing a traditional, you know, paving program where they're going out and see a nice, smooth, black surface. That's not what's going to happen here if we use this methodology. So, you know, what we're looking at from you is, where we're at, we have $250,000, and that's only going to do a traditional mill and pave of a mile road, or do we use that money towards, roadway preservation?
Well, just everybody knows on that refi, if we'd go ahead and squeeze that trigger, that's 300,000 plus we could stick into the
Well,
road program.
Exactly right, Mayor, and council has in the packet, and it shows our debt service dropping off in approximately the year 2020. And our debt service right now is $3.2 million per year, and that goes down significantly. So I think what Jamie and Paul are suggesting here is, I don't think it's a Band-Aid, because you still have to preserve these roads anyway. And if we can preserve and still do some paving until we get closer to that time where we can start floating some more bonds to go back up to, using about $1 million a year for paving, we're kind of in a point right now, we're just, I don't want to say biding time, but we're going to maybe do some preventative maintenance instead of doing some paving, which still should be done anyway.
Well, several years ago, we did all three methods. We did a traditional mill and pave as well as a fog seal and a chip seal. We did all three back when you had the dollars to do them, but we don't this year.
if I could belabor this just a little longer. Joe, if you could put up that PowerPoint presentation once more. If you look at the chart, I guess really what we're getting at is, on the left of the chart again, is the failed pavements, and on the right is the brand new things. If you try to repave all the ones and the twos, let's say, and you spend all your money repaving the ones and twos to make them tens, what you're gonna see is the fours, the fives, the sixes, the sevens, that big middle of the bell curve is gonna start shifting its way to the left. As you're chasing a couple bad roads, the bulk of your roads are gonna continue to deteriorate. So what we're talking about is taking the fives, the sixes, the sevens, and keeping them fives, sixes, and sevens. And if you gotta let the ones and twos and threes become threes and, or twos and ones, and you lose a couple roads, there's really not much you can do. You have to go for the most bang for your buck and save most of the roads that you can while you can. And like Tim said, eventually you get to the point where some money's freed up, you can go back after those ones and twos and threes and try and get those, but
But
The
no matter,
300,000
the long
might
haul
hurt
is
you.
still going to be always to preserve as long as we can, according to that one presentation you showed us, that we're going to save money in the long run by doing this preservation. No matter if we had $5 million to put into the roads, we still want to implement that.
Right, and that's what we did over the last probably 7, 8 years. That's why we included preservation in conjunction with the traditional mill and paved, because we were trying to push that curve back. And that's why we were successful in doing that.
Okay.
20 years ago, I kind of use the example of changing your oil in your car. 20 years ago, we would pave the road, we'd let it sit for 15 or 20 years, and we'd repave it again. It's sort of like buying a new car and not changing your oil until the engine seizes up and then putting a new engine in your car. So the preventive maintenance is like changing oil or something. You make your engine last longer, and in the end, it saves you money.
And
Makes sense.
One of
Very
the,
good.
one of the biggest problems that we have is, we have to use Super Pave. I mean, it's a PennDOT product. There's nothing super about Super Pave, nothing. And it's a product that, that's one of the reasons our roads aren't lasting as long anymore, because the product isn't as good as it was, what it used to be. They were called the Marshall mixes or the ID mixes. They were a much better product. And what we found, and what's funny is even the paving contractors that we deal with, when we pave a road, within the next 2 years, we fog seal it, because you have to seal it up and keep the water out of it. And they come out to look at what we did, and they totally agree with us.
Oh.
They said that's what you should be doing.
Now, is there any grant money that we can apply for that may help us do more roads or more with our roads?
Well, Jamie has explored a lot of the grants, which what we talked about at the last meeting, and it seems like most of the grants are towards traffic signals and things of that nature now. I haven't seen any for this type of work.
We always keep our eyes open.
Absolutely.
Most of the grants nowadays that you're talking about, Linda, are more for environmental things. Like we got that Growing Greener grant for the
Right.
stormwater, which the
Right.
school district is. A lot of the trail grant we got, a lot of it's environmental, things of that nature. Getting a grant anymore for roads those days are long gone. They used to have what they called the WAM money, that all the state representative, walking around money is what they called it. And that was only $30,000 that each state representative and state senator got. But that obviously is not a lot of money. But for roads, I couldn't even tell you the last time a grant for a road.
Well, that's what Jamie and I always talk about, because there always seems to be money for new roadways or new interstates, but never money to
Maintain them.
rebuild your existing roadway system.
When I talk to people with the DCED, Department of Community and Economic Development, well, that's what your liquid fuels money is for, which it is, because it's earmarked specifically for things for public works, and mostly, for roads. We use it for street lighting and mostly for street lighting. You can use it for that, obviously, too. But there's, for roads, virtually no grants out there for that.
Wow. Don't they realize we have to drive to get to the green space?
That's a good point.
Any other questions, council? Thank you, Jamie, for your time. Paul?
Very good.
you-
Yeah, very
Thank
good.
you.
Thanks,
That was
Jamie.
good
Paul.
presentation.
Very good. That's
Very
very
informational.
informative.
Okay, we're going to
So,
move over to.
Once the weather changes and we evaluate the roads, we'll be back.
All righty.
Don't make it any